Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. David Miller, representing the Moynihan Institute for Research and Policy. And our goal is to take a deeper look at both policy, research, and practice as it relates to Black fathers. We are excited that you guys are joining us this morning for what we believe is an exciting webinar, really looking at the issue of men's health. And we're going to be giving folks a few more minutes to come on into the building, and then we're going to get started. So we're just going to take another moment or two just to get folks situated, work out the technology glitches that you may have, and then we are going to get started. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, good morning. My name is Dr. David Miller. I'm just going to take a quick moment to go around the horn, let the team introduce themselves, and we're going to dive right into what we believe is not only an informative conversation, but a super important conversation. So we're going to start with Dr. Jeff. Just go ahead and quickly introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Shears. I'm the co-chair of the Moynihan Institute for Fatherhood Research and Policy. Glad to be on this morning.
And then who's next up?
Good morning. My name is Cassandra Bolar. I am also a fellow with the Moynihan Institute, housed within Fathers Incorporated.
Thank you. Thank you. And who's up next?
Good morning. I'm Kenneth Braswell. I'm the CEO of Fathers Incorporated.
Thank you, Kenny. And last but not least.
Good morning. Danielle Shears, and I'm just one of the panelists on today. Glad to be here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a series of conversations focused on Black men and health. Please utilize the chat. Any questions or comments you have, you'll be able to drop in the chat. I just want to say, for me, this is a conversation that is both personal and professional. The vast majority of men in my family have not reached the ripe age of 60 years old. Outside of my dad, who recently passed away from dementia at 84, the men in my family, for whatever reason, have not thought it was important enough to make health a priority. My brother died at 55 from stomach cancer. He passed away a couple of years ago. And then my 5 cousins, we were raised like brothers. None of them actually reached 50 years of age. And so we decided that this was a topic that was both personal and professional to many of us, particularly when we look at the data, rates around prostate cancer, diabetes, hypertension. We thought that this was a topic that is not discussed enough. And since there's a great deal of emphasis around physical health and mental health for men in the month of June, we thought that this webinar would be very timely and important. And so I guess I'm going to kick off the first leg of this important conversation with Kenny Braswell and having a conversation around dental health. And for whatever reason, most of the time, you guys, when we talk about health, we end up talking about physical health, mental health, but we don't necessarily talk about dental care as it relates to Black men. And I think Kenny Braswell has a critically important message, particularly for Black men as it relates to dental care. He'll get an opportunity to share his own story in brief. We also have some, very targeted questions to ask Kenny, particularly as it relates to dental health as it relates to prevention and maintenance. And then we'll definitely be able to hear from folks in the building any questions or comments that you have. And so, Kenny, super quickly, man, just share with the audience, and this particular webinar will be archived so other folks will get an opportunity to listen to the archive version and be able to participate. Talk to us about why you believe many Black men ignore dental care.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I think that we ignore dental care primarily because we ignore all care. Growing up, there were no great models of men who demonstrated a concern about their health. The old joke was, men will work till it falls off or it doesn't work. Anything other than that is no excuse for not showing up, in the lives of your family, your children, and in the world. And specifically as a man, you don't show up with any vulnerabilities. And so, because of that backdrop, health in general for me was just never a priority. The irony in it is that, for the dental space, it took me some time to realize that my dental journey is connected to my overall health journey, right? And so the dental part of it has always been the lesser of importance in my health life. It was, can I breathe because I had asthma? Can I, run far because I was obese? Will I live long because I'm Black? All of those kinds of things. And dental was just not something that was on the radar. And part of that was because of the learned lessons growing up, in Brooklyn, in New York, in a single mother household, with someone who was trying to do all the things she could to pay the bills. And dental insurance wasn't something that was at the top of priority, for us. The only time we had to go to the dentist was when we had a toothache and when we needed something extracted, right? And so that became my behavior when I got older. If it hurt, take it out, And what I learned is over time, I looked in my mouth and more of my teeth was gone. And so that creates a bad habit because it was always about never about prevention, always about reactive actions to whatever the pain happened to be at the time. And then lastly, I'll end here, David, is that health insurance was never a priority for me as an adult. I didn't understand not working a good job in a good company with good benefits was something that was part of finding employment, right? For us, it was just about going to work to pay the bills and health bills not being part of that. And certainly dental not being a part of the conversation. I don't remember in any of the jobs that I was in where they extracted the difference between having health insurance, dental insurance, and optical insurance, right? Which is a whole nother conversation about that. And then there is the varying degrees of not being able to find great plans in all of those areas, which just to me exacerbates the bad habits.
Thank you, Kenny. So Kenny, give folks in the building just kind of a brief overview of what your dental journey has been like over the last couple of months. Just give folks just a sense of what your dental journey has been like over the last couple of months.
Yeah, the fast forward version is in somewhere around January, in the house working as I often do in front of the computer, grinding in the middle of the night, and this excruciating pain just kind of hit my face. I had no idea what it was, but I know it was coming from my mouth area. And so much so that it just doubled me over at the computer. And so finally, when I got enough to get up and go into the bathroom to kind of open my mouth to see what it was, I realized that the tooth that it was coming from literally had a hole in it. And I was like, I had never seen it before. And so the next morning I found an urgent care dentist and went in. Um, they did some x-rays on my mouth and determined that I had a bacteria in my mouth that was literally eating at my gums, which was then softening my teeth and tearing the enamel off of my teeth and exposing my nerves to, once we know when those nerves are exposed to anything, cold, hot, sugar, any of those things, you don't want that problem. You don't want that drama in your life. And so she came back and she said, I got good news and I got bad news. And I said, well, give me the bad news first. And she said, the bad news is we can't save any of your teeth. She said, this is going to be an ongoing problem. There's nothing that's going to correct this. The only thing that we can do is extract everything out of your mouth. And so she said, the good news is that dentistry has come far enough along that we can replace all of your teeth, better than ever. As if you knew the $6 million man, we could put something in that's going to last longer than you're going to last, in your mouth. But it's going to be a journey. It's going to be about a year-long journey. You're literally going to have to learn how to eat again. You're going to have to learn how to speak again. You're going to have to learn how to do a lot of different things that you took for granted. One of the comical things that I laugh about now is I'm still trying to learn how to whistle again. I was a great whistler and now I can't whistle. And I'm trying to figure out, how to do that. And so they extracted all of those out, and it took about 30 days for the healing to take place. I literally could not eat. So as a result of that, I lost a lot of weight. So the good thing, bad thing, right? Good thing, bad thing, teeth is like having to be taken out your mouth. Good thing, all of this weight that I've been trying to lose for years, now it's like shredding off of my body because I'm not eating as much. The other good thing about that is that because of it, I changed my eating habits, eating smaller portions now, eating right now, not drinking carbonated drinks, not drinking drinks with high levels of sugar in it, all of those kinds of things. And then as a result of that, just recently, just to kind of round it to the end, my doctor just took me off my high blood pressure medicine. My A1C is now in normal ranges. My vitamin D deficiency is back where it should be. My cholesterol is coming down. So on a bad side of it is that I had to go through all of that to get to the right side of it. But there is something good in it, because what it does is focuses you on your total health again. And again, I make this connection between our overall health and then our dental health and other things. There are things that can happen in your life that bring attention to your overall health. And so now, I have full dentures in the mouth. The mouth is completely healed. The stents that are in there are healing and in place. And in August, I have to go back in to have the permanents placed in my mouth. And so those would be the permanents. And so again, bad thing, bad habits. You don't want the drama. I keep telling people. And listen, the thing that hit me was something that my dentist told me. And she says, I'm going to say this to you. She says, it's not going to do anything for you now. She says, but I just want to put what you're going through in perspective. And she said, it only takes about 7 minutes a day to take care of your teeth, right? And I said, what? She said, it only takes 7 minutes a day. So you are sitting here with all of this pain and drama you're going through. And all you had to do was invest 7 minutes in the morning and at night in your life, and you wouldn't be here today. And that just put a whole different perspective on what's going on with men and the priority that we do or don't put on our health across the board.
And so thank you, Kenny. Talk a little bit about insurance, man, because you mentioned insurance earlier. Talk about, if you can, some of the challenges you had in terms of being able to access your insurance to handle these major dental procedures that you had to get done.
So total life, total health, right? And so I'm talking about this total health, which includes, all of these things, our physical health, dental health, our optical health. And then we're not even talking about our mental health, because that's a whole nother piece of the work, right? But then there is this kind of total life thing, right? We go to work to pay the bills, to adhere to our responsibilities and do all of those other things. But we don't take into consideration that having a good job or having a viable business that allows you to get great health care is just as important as the other things. And the healthcare system now is changing so much. I was just telling someone the other day that the way that the healthcare system is now billing us is literally ridiculous. And I cannot understand how people are surviving under what's taking place. Literally, I have, I think we have the best insurance that you can have. And I'll go to an appointment and they don't even ask you for copays anymore. Like at the office, I get home 2 weeks later, I get an email that says, "Oh, you owe $500." And I'm like, well, what is this for? I got insurance, I got copay. Oh, the insurance company says that they're not paying for this. Oh, so no one calls, you guys don't check, you don't ask the question, you just send me a $500 bill and you ask me to pay it. And then what happens if I don't pay it? Then I don't get future care. And so the healthcare system is so erratic right now, from all areas, whether it is the pharmaceutical part of it, where it is the medicines and buying the medicines. Like literally, I had one of my medicines that I was getting at cost. And I went in one day and the lady says, it's $150. And I said, $150? Like, what are you talking about? She says, oh, she says they only pay for this medicine for 4 months. And then after the 4 months, you have to pay. I said, but no one said that to me. She said, well, your primary doctor should have told you that. I said, but they didn't tell me that. And so I say all that to say that I'm fortunate because I'm in a position, a financial position, to be able to absorb those costs. But for many people, they're not in position to absorb that kind of a hit, 2 or 3 times a month, depending on how often you're going to see the doctor, depending on what's going on, with you. And so you shared the story with me, and I read that story in excruciating pain, thinking about it, about the council person who murdered his mom and then took a gun and murdered himself because he could not overcome the bombardment of medical bills he was receiving for his mother. And so when you think about us at our ages, right, we're thinking about self-care. But we're also moving in a space that we have to start thinking about care of our parents, right? Because our parents' insurances are not adequate for what they're going through and what they're doing. And so we're now having to bring them into our homes and reestablish what we're doing at home and providing care for them because we can't absorb the cost of the medical fees, the care fees, the medicine fees, the having a great job that gives you the ability to be flexible. Think about back in the day when someone had to work from 9 to 5 and they didn't get paid when they didn't work, right? Now, good, bad, right? The bad of COVID is that COVID took out a lot of people. The good of COVID, it literally has changed the working culture, right? And so people are more flexible and can move and not only take care of their kids, but their parents are a part of that, as well. And so the dental insurance is something that I've never focused on before as an advocacy piece of my work, because it's not just about telling people to take better care of themselves, but they have to take better care of themselves in context to the ability of their total life experience and their ability to pay bills and ability to be flexible also has to be taken into account.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, Kenny, I know you're raising a son, you're raising a young man. What lessons do you hope to impart on your son as it relates to, specifically dental care, but also just healthcare in general? Because I know you're raising a
Mm-hmm.
man child, man. What lessons
Yeah.
do you hope you can impart to him as it relates to dental care?
Learn behaviors. He's got to see it to know it. Like, so now he's walking with me through this journey and I'm having these conversations with him very quietly. And I'm saying, hey, dude, like, you don't want these problems. I was like, you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, brushing your teeth, flossing, all of those things, and trying to create that habit in him now so that when he becomes an adult, it is a habit for him. And my nephew, the same thing in the house. It's like, listen, I need y'all to kind of focus on some things that's extremely important and doesn't feel important to you now because you feel like you're young. You feel like you can absorb anything. You know, if you fall on the ground, you bounce faster, you heal faster. You know, one of the running jokes with my peer groups today is, you know, now our kids are 16, 17, 18, lower 20s, and they want to get in the driveway and play basketball with me, and they want me to play at full speed with them. I'm like, no, I'm not falling for the banana in the tailpipe, because I've heard too many stories of guys that know they shouldn't be in the driveway trying to dunk on their kids, tearing their Achilles, right? And so at 23, you can recover from that in 6 months. At 63, it might be 6 years before I recover from it, if I ever recover from it, right? And so you just have to be more intentional, you know, about the movement of your body. And you have to, in learn behavior and in modeling, you know, say to your kids that, you know, getting older is an inevitability. You're going to get older. You're not going to always be young. Be young, have fun being young, be happy being young, but take some of that youth time and invest in yourself in a way that when you get older, you're not where I am. And so I think that he now he really understands that. He thinks about his calorie consumption. He thinks about his sugar consumption. He thinks about when he's eating. He does not drink sodas. He does not eat candies. He does not, you know, my wife is, you know, um, the non-pork person in the house. He does not eat pork. And so all of that is as a result of watching his parents eat healthy and live a particular way with respect to our health. And not only that, he sees us going to the doctor frequently, right? And so, but at the same time, and out in here, he is an athlete, 6'4", varsity basketball. He does believe that he can do anything his mind wills him, you know, to do. And then there's the manhood component that comes in, where you want your son to be strong and you want him to be aggressive and you want him to be all of these things on the court. And how do you get him to manage understanding the difference between when you're hurt and when you're injured? That's our conversation today, that there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. You can play through hurt, but what I don't want you to play through is injury. Like, if something is wrong, that needs to be halted, stopped, taken care of. Hurt, you can play through to the extent you can play through it. And so it keeps his manhood intact on the floor amongst his other peers, who would oftentimes back in the day be encouraged to continue to play when they're injured. And if you know enough about NFL players, NBA players, and all professional sports players that back in the day played when they were injured, you can see the impact of that today when they're older, in the way that they move, the health issues they have, and all of them are associated with some injury that they played through when they should not have played through it.
Powerful, powerful. And so, Kenny, we're going to be winding down shortly, but there's going to be some questions, you know, coming in from people in the building. For example, one question is, can you define what hurt is and what injury is again? They just want a little bit of clarity around your idea around the difference between being hurt and being injured.
You know, hurt for my son is my legs are tired. I don't feel like running. You know, my arm feels funny. It's like, well, is there something wrong with your legs? You know, is there muscle pull? Is there muscle strain? No, I'm just tired. Well, that may be levels of hurt, right? Or we've seen players play basketball, fall on the court, and tweak your ankle, right? We've all tweaked our ankle. And it pulls a little bit, but it's not really injured. It's just hurting at the time. But if it's injured, you know what injury looks like. Injury doesn't allow you to recover quickly. In hurt, you can get up and say, okay, if I play through this, and we heard this, walk it out, walk it out. We talking about Charlie horses and cramps and things like that. Walk it out, walk it out. And if you walk it out and it feels better and it's good, then you were hurt, but you weren't injured. But if you fall down and you pull something, you tear something, you break something, you do any of those other things, those are injuries that take a much longer time for repair. And if it takes physician interference in saying that something is wrong with you that needs to be repaired and takes time to be repaired, now you're injured. But oftentimes we allow, look at some of the old football players and look at their fingers and their hands. Munoz is a perfect example. I always forget his first name. He used to play for the Bears, I believe. Anthony Munoz. He was an offensive lineman. If you ever see Anthony Munoz talk with his hands, you'll notice that on this pinky on his hand is literally turned this way on his hand. His 5 fingers are up like this, and his pinky finger is turned that way. And he said he broke it in a game and they wanted to fix it. And he said, no, don't fix it. I'm still going to play. He was playing injured. That wasn't hurt. That was injured. That was something physically wrong with his body that he never took care of. And now he has been retired for many, many, many years. And as a result of not taking care of that finger, when you're going to pro-line, they would have popped it back in. It would have dislocated. They would have wrapped it up. They would have went through physical therapy and his hand would have been normal. But because he played through injury and it wasn't just hurt, now that's a part of his life today. That's the difference in my mind between hurt and injured.
And so, Kenny, when as we circle back to dental care and particularly Black men or just men in general, um, given what you have gone through, and I was very happy to see you post some very thought-provoking videos on social media that a lot of people responded to, kind of watching your journey unfold over the last couple of months as it relates to this major dental surgery that you received. What's the what advice, man, do we have for the men out here, man?
Don't take your body for granted. Don't take your life for granted. In essence, to not take care of yourself, particularly when you have children and family, in my mind's eye, is the most selfish act you can engage in. Because your life isn't just about you. The obligation of taking care of myself is so that my son doesn't make it to the NBA and on draft day, he's got to speak to me in past tense. I need to be in the room when he speaks about me. And the only way that I'm going to be in the room when he speaks about me is to take care of myself to extend my life so I am there. I don't want him going through his professional career looking up to the sky saying that my father is looking down on me. I want to be Halliburton's dad. I want to be John Morant's dad. I'm not going to be on the court acting crazy. Who knows? I don't know. I might be on the court acting crazy. But I need my son to interact with me in that manner, right? Because we've seen players across the spectrum who had dads who passed away in the apex of their career. Michael Jordan is probably the one that stands out the most for me right now because losing his father impacted him greatly. And so I think it is not taking advantage of your health. Don't be selfish with your health. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself, if for no other reason that you owe your life to your children. You owe your life to your family. You don't want people to remember you in a grieving state. You want them to know you in a celebratory state.
Thank you, Kenny. Given the robust work that Fathers Incorporated is doing across the country with fathers, do you envision doing more work in the advocacy space around men's health, particularly as it relates to dental care? Given what you've gone through over the last couple of months, do you see that being an additional body of work that Fathers Incorporated wants to be a champion of?
Right now, it's difficult for me to look at the advocacy side because I think the work for us is in the cultural perspective side. And that is changing the culture of how men think about health. Forget about the advocacy
Mm.
piece because the advocacy piece ain't got nothing to do with you getting up in the morning, running 10 miles, lifting some weights, being active for 30 minutes. Advocacy don't stop you from doing that, but cultural perspective does. And so until we change cultural perspective with respect to how we think about our health, advocacy is never going to have an impact on it. Now, that's not all of us, right? Because some of us are at ages where advocacy is having an impact on us. And so the question is, what are those things and how can we begin to lift our voices in a way to get people to be more convinced to be a little more responsive and caring and compassionate to those who are at the more seasoned stages of their lives and they don't have the ability to do those things, right? And then you have kind of the other things that are part of our lexicon now, that I don't remember these words or these issues being a part, or at least they were a part of our lives in different ways. You're hearing more about our children with autism, right? That wasn't a term in the 70s and 80s, right? It looked differently. It probably existed, but we have to start thinking about what are the causes to those things? Is it an eating habit? Is it something that we should be doing differently? What's going on in those spaces? And then the other one for our more seasoned people is um, Alzheimer and dementia, right? Like, why is this such a cultural phenomenon now with our more seasoned people? Where now I know even at my age, I forget things, but I forget things because I'm just thinking too much. I got too many things on my mind, and I do forget things. But there is a normal pathway of not remembering as many things as you used to remember, and then there's this accelerated, right, pace to which our more seasoned folks are beginning to one day they can remember, every scripture in the Bible, and the next day they can't even tell you, three books of the Bible. That's of concern. And so I'm not all sure whether or not that is again an advocacy issue or a cultural perspective issue, which is what is it that we need to do and change in our health behaviors that can improve the health of our communities and families in a way that advocacy cannot.
So Kenny, last question. Given the national landscape in terms of the work being done with fathers and men, what would you like to see from programs that are in direct service with men? What would you like to see?
So for our program in Gentle Words Academy, we do a great job at connecting the skill set that they are trying to obtain in being great fathers to being responsible human beings in the lives of their families. And so everything that you do, even their attendance in our classes, again, I talk about this selfish act. Like, you are in our classes not just because you want to become a better father, but you're in our classes because you want to become a better father for your children, right? It is always connected to the main thing. And so we do a lot of ensuring that as we are talking about life skills, whether it's responsibility, integrity, radical accountability, whatever we're talking to them about, it is always connected to the end goal, which is to be there for their children. Like, we talk about, something very simple. It's radical when you hear it, but it's very simple in terms of its application. And this is just a change of mindset, right? Again, I'm kind of easing back into this mental space because in some spaces, this is where this is important, where we're talking to our dads in general about you cannot hate her more than you love your children. Th- that cannot happen. You cannot dislike her more than you like your children, Like if you love your children in some way, you have to love her no matter what your relationship is. You don't have to be in a relationship to have a relationship. When you have children, your relationship with her and your co-parent is lifelong, even if your children are not around for it. I've seen tons and tons of couples who are not together but have lost children and still connected and bound by having this child. And so when you extend what you're doing with fathers in direct services to connect them to the main thing and make sure that that is a part of your curriculum, is part of your conversation, is part of the skill set of your facilitators, your case managers, your navigators, your program managers, your project managers, your evaluators, your researchers, everybody who's in your infrastructure should understand that while you're doing the X's and O's of your service delivery, that this is still a human work. We are still dealing with humans, and there still needs to be a connection with respect to who we're dealing with to ensure that the reason that they understand the reason that they're in the space is not just for their own sake, it is for the sake of their children. And I think, again, to me, that is a cultural perspective shift. It's fine to have a evidence-based curriculum. It's fine, to do great in recruitment. It's fine to do all of those things. But if you're not impacting people in a personal way, and you're not connecting with them in a personal way, those individuals will leave your programs changed, but they will not leave your programs transformed.
Well, Kenny, we want to thank you for helping us kick off this webinar, really talking about an issue that just is not talked about enough when we talk about, healthcare. We want to thank you for your candor, your transparency in terms of what you've gone through, and many of us have talked to you over the last couple of months and seen some of your videos, and you've been, extremely honest about the pain that you've gone through, and the weight loss, and learning how to talk again, and learning how to eat again, as it relates to getting major reconstruction of your mouth as it relates to dental care. And so once again, man, we just want to thank you for helping us kick this off. Again, we thought it was really important to hear from somebody. I mean, we could have brought on a dentist, but we thought it was really important to hear from a Black man who has a very personal story as it relates to, dental care. And we hope that the folks that are in the building and the folks that will watch this in its entirety will think more critically about dental care and begin to host conversations with other Black men of all ages around the importance of healthcare, particularly as it relates to dentistry. So once again, Kenny, just want to thank you, man, for coming on, spending a little bit of time with us this morning, and may you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. No, I'm here for the duration. I want to be a part of this. Appreciate all of you as well.
So thank you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, again, we're super excited that you're attending our webinar, really focused on looking more critically as it relates to men's health. We're going to be having several other panels throughout the morning. Please feel free to drop whatever questions or comments you may have in the chat. And so next, we're going to go to Miss Danielle Shears, who is one of our featured panelists. And fasten your seatbelts, because she has some really critical information as it relates to men's health.
Dr. Miller, and thank you, Moynihan Institute, for allowing me to come and share what I believe is one of the most intriguing and most important subjects, and that is that of our Black men's health. And if you allow me, I am going to share my screen. I have some PowerPoints that I want to go through. And let me know if you can see that. Can you see my screen yet? Yeah, okay, awesome. All right, so we're just going to dive right in. I'm not going to belabor, but we're just going to dive right in and just talk about that. But we're going to start with first the objectives. And what I really want to do is just kind of raise awareness, first of all. Now, there are just some general things that we all know about health, but there are some other things that you just may not know as it pertains to men's health, and just the things that you need to really hone in on. We'll also differentiate some risk factors, because there's some things that are modifiable and there are things that are non-modifiable, and it's important to distinguish those two. Then we're going to talk about promotion and prevention, because that prevention is one of the key things that we really want to make sure that we are doing. We'll address some barriers, and then I will introduce the concept of holistic health. So as Dr. Braswell has already stated, he already talked about a little bit of some of the state of men's health. To me, it's an emergency. I think we're at a state of emergency as it pertains to men's health, because some of these numbers are just not changing. It's just not getting better, okay? And it's astonishing to look at some of the statistics surrounding Black men's health. For instance, life expectancy. Black men have the shortest lifespan of all racial and gender groups, with an average life expectancy of 72 years. Heart disease, Black men are 30% more likely to die from heart disease than white men. Stroke, Black men are 60% more likely to die from stroke than white men. Then mental health, and as you can see, and I'm not going to sit and read the PowerPoints, but as you can see, more and more and more Black men at a higher rate than other race and genders as it pertains to these issues: mental health, diabetes, and hypertension, which is high blood pressure. All right. Some of the factors contributing to these disparities: systemic racism. We all know what that looks like. And, you know, we can get in our little bubbles and it seems like, is that really still going on? Yes, it's still going on. And this is something that is impacting our Black men's health: systemic racism, socioeconomic status, access to healthcare, mistrust in the healthcare system, and then that mental health piece. As stated before, like that's a whole discussion all within itself, that mental health piece, but it is so critical and so important. So as we looked at some of the chronic illnesses before, with hypertension, diabetes, stroke, and that sort of thing. These are all chronic diseases that, you know, you're diagnosed with something and they just go on and on and on. And so we were looking at, why is it these chronic diseases also come with a chronic medication? And there was a study done by Olmsted University who looked at, why is it that more than half of Americans are on chronic medications? Why is that? First thing, they saw that both patients and doctors believe that every symptom and diagnosis needs a medication. The second thing was that doctors are more focused on finding a diagnosis instead of trying to discover the root cause. And number three, people are just not engaged enough in their own health. And for me, that third one takes precedence over them all, because if we were more engaged, we could basically annihilate the first two. Okay. And I believe today is a critical point in a time in your lives where you need to decide that this is the time that I am going to take charge of my own health. We have already heard a little bit about the myths and men surrounding, you know, not going to the doctor, not wanting to go to the doctor, that sort of thing. But your engagement in your health is a critical step that has to happen in order to take charge of your health. So looking at the top 5 health concerns for men, these are the top 5: high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, stroke. I know you've heard this before. You've probably heard that that's what it is, but it's the top 5 for our Black men. And the hypertension or high blood pressure is the leading risk factor for heart disease and stroke. Heart disease is the leading cause of death for Black men. And diabetes increases the risk of heart disease and stroke and kidney failure. One of those things that we really need to hone in on. So, you know, we go to the doctor, you might get diagnosed, you might get put on this hypertension or high blood pressure medication. And what they're not telling you is going down that path and just staying on that high blood pressure medication year after year after year with no expiration date. is going to ultimately lead to kidney failure. It's going to lead to other things that are going on. These are things that are just not shared when you're given this medication and sent out the door. So we talked about that engagement. You have to be engaged in your own healthcare journey. And then stroke is linked to long-term disability and depression. And that has become huge. As we have seen, this mental health thing has really become something that we can't even get around, but we have to continue to talk about it. We have to continue to highlight what that means, okay? Now looking at risk factors. A lot of times people feel like, okay, well, am I at risk? Am I not at risk? They look at family ties and that sort of thing, but there are modifiable and then there are non-modifiable risk factors. Now, the modifiable ones, pretty obvious: diet, physical activity, stopping smoking, alcohol and substance use, weight management, blood pressure and cholesterol management, stress management, and healthcare access. Now, the non-modifiables, these are the ones that you can't really control. You can't control your genetics or your family history or your age, your race, your gender, or structural social determinants. But I want to go back to the genetic piece right there. This is one, you can't modify your genetics, but there's this phenomenon called epigenetics. And what epigenetics is, it is the external factors, the lifestyle things that you do that cause that gene to be turned on. And let me make it in general terms here. So you have genes, you have the genes that you were born with in your DNA, but those genes have to be triggered or turned on by something. And that's where epigenetics comes in. It's the lifestyle factors. It's the external things, the environments that you are in that can turn on or trigger that gene to happen. So what am I saying? Just because you think that diabetes or whatever it might be runs in your family, it's not that it runs in your family, it's running through your family as a result of these lifestyle things, as a result of these external factors, epigenetics, that are causing the genes, and some habitual things. You think about a family that's not eating right, a family that has a sedentary lifestyle, things are not promoted in the family. That's what causes those genes to be triggered. So looking at our next slide, and I just want to really hone in on it. Here is the role of genetics. This is the role that genetics plays. So when you hear someone or you think that, oh, because it runs in your family and you're sitting around waiting to get it, I want you to really take a look at this. For high blood pressure, the estimated genetic contribution is only 30 to 55%. So we're talking a whole nother 45 to 70% chance that you don't have to have high blood pressure, despite the fact you think it runs in your family. Same with type 2 diabetes. The heritability might be 25 to 80%, looks a little high, but the heritability, think about what you inherit. You inherit a house, you inherit furniture, that's something that is like given to you. That's inheritable, but that's not genetic. Okay, so it's really kind of the habitual habit kind of things that number looks to. Only 10 to 15% in terms of type 2 diabetes is a known genetic loci, okay? Cancer of all types, you only have an estimated genetic contribution of about 33%. And then the same with stroke. So what am I saying? The good news, genetic factors play a significant but not exclusive role in these diseases, okay? The remaining risk is largely influenced by your lifestyle, environment, and social determinants, okay? So for all these conditions, having a family history is what increases, but prevention and lifestyle changes remain crucial for reducing the overall risk. And this is just a chart here that just looks at the difference between modifiable and non-modifiable. Look how many more things that we have control of, that we can modify, that we can control, okay? That's just to give you a visual. So when we talk about prevention, that is the one that is key. We want to prevent it at all costs. And you may be someone that already has some challenges that you're facing, and that's okay. There's things that can be reversed. But when we look at prevention, why is that? It reduces chronic disease, reduces premature death, reduces the need for emergency care. We heard about what it's looking like with these insurance companies and all the things that's going on in the world and the healthcare system. I don't know about you, but I want to stay out of the emergency room and hospitalizations. Okay, this is just not the time. So prevention matters. You save money in the long run. It costs a lot more to take care of your health on the back end than it does to prevent any of these diseases happening. Okay, and then number 5, which I think is huge, impacts generational health. I know with the Moynihan Institute, we talk about the generational fathering and that sort of thing. Generational health is right up there with it. Okay. What parents are doing, the lifestyles, what you eat, how you move, how you are educating your children will run generation after generation after generation. We already just saw that the genetics doesn't play a full picture and what we gain, but also the epigenetics. So the generational health is huge, and it could start with you today. Okay. So what do we do to kind of take action here? How are we going to take action? First, changing the mindset. Changing the mindset about healthcare, changing the mindset about how we as African Americans and the Black man sees his health and the healthcare system. First of all, with doctors, they do what they do. They are there to get us out of trouble. They are there to help manage your medications. So you go in there with the symptom. Their job is to take what you have told them, diagnose, and give you a medication if needed. Okay. And that's their goal. Diagnose and give you a medication. It is what it is. Okay. And to that end, we really have a sick care system. It's really a sick care system. And that's why when we have to change our mindset and not think that, okay, I'm going to the doctor and that's where it's being managed. We have to maintain our health outside of that doctor's office. He is simply giving you a medication. He is simply telling you what you have. And now it's our turn. Once you leave those 4 walls, it is your turn. So the mindset is huge around that, okay? And then knowing your numbers, and we're going to talk extensive about this in just a moment. You have to know your numbers. You have to become a student of what you have going on, okay? Because the doctor telling you, you have this, and then take this medication, if that's the extent of your care, then it's a possibility it's not going to get any better, okay? And then the third one, be willing to make the lifestyle changes. Because when nothing changes until something changes. So we have to be willing to make those changes. So when I talk about knowing your numbers, and just for the sake of simplicity, I want you to only kind of focus on the glucose numbers here. We're just going to look at glucose alone. Now, this one is just looking at, if you don't know, the glucose looks at whether or not you have diabetes. This is looking at your sugar, as we call it, the old folks used to call it, looking at your sugar. So we'll just look at glucose. So as you can see, this is a normal range. This is what most doctors' offices, this is the range that they're looking at, okay? When you go in and they do a blood test, okay, this is the range. This pathological range is for someone that already has diabetes. This is your range. They're going to look at 65, between 65 and 110, okay? And then we'll talk about functional range in just a moment. So you go to the doctor, you had lab work drawn, you wait that 24 to 48 hours. You get the call from the doctor's office. Hey, this is such and such nurse for Dr. Such and such. Just calling to let you know that your lab values came back and they're all within normal limits. He just wants to see you back in about 6 months and just let us know if you have any other questions and continue to take your medication as prescribed. Okay. Maybe that phone call sounds familiar. Now, you hang up the phone. Okay. She said it's within normal range. Okay, so this is your lab value. It's 97, okay? Let's go back to this normal range. Is it in normal range? It's in normal range, right? It's within the range. We go to the pathological range. It's within that range. Again, this is somebody that has diabetes, and they're allowing, you see how much more they allow for your lab values to be a little higher, okay? But now we look at this functional range. This functional range is the range that says that your body is operating in the most optimal state. This is the best state of health that your body could be in. And when you keep your glucose in this range, now we're talking health, okay? But you don't, first of all, you didn't inquire about what the value was. You don't even know it's 7. All you know is she told you was within normal range. And that's really not good as it pertains to the functional range. Are we in the best state of health with a value of 97? Okay, so this is why knowing your numbers is important, because if we're hanging out in the 90s for our glucose, that's not optimal health in terms of, because how many lifestyle things away are we from diabetes if we don't currently have it, if we're hanging out in the 90s with our glucose, okay? So this is why that's important. All right, and then as you can see with some of the others, we won't have time to go through the rest of those, but that I just wanted to highlight why knowing your numbers is so important. Another one is with this blood pressure, okay? And just take a peek for now at just this orange line here. Now they're diagnosing high blood pressure in stages. So you got high blood pressure, hypertension stage 1. In the 130 to 139 or 80 to 89, they're saying that's stage 1 high blood pressure, okay? What is the key here? The key here is, first of all, you're going into these doctor's offices, likely you were in traffic, you had to use the bathroom once you got in, you rushed in, they take you right back to the back, and then they take your blood pressure. Chances are it's going to be 130 or above, based on how you just presented to that doctor's office, okay? Whether that's the case or not, another reason to make sure that you are kind of knowing your own numbers and looking at this outside of the doctor's office. But why is this even more important? Because there are doctors out there prescribing blood pressure medication when your blood pressure is in this range. But this is what the true recommendation is. Medications are recommended to lower blood pressure in stage 1 hypertension if you've already had a heart attack or stroke, or if your 10-year risk of a heart attack is higher than 10%. For others with stage 1 hypertension, the first action is to take lifestyle changes seriously. So what am I saying? Your blood pressure is hanging out in the 130 to the 80 somethings. That does not necessitate taking a high blood pressure medication. Now, I'm not on this call to tell you not to take medication or not to follow doctor's instructions. I am not here to do that. What I'm saying is you have a choice to make some lifestyle choices as it pertains to your blood pressure in particular, okay? Now, again, this is going to be one of them situations where you really have to work with functional professionals to help you kind of gauge where that is. We're not dismissing conventional medical advice, but what we're doing is helping to bridge the gap between what you're suggesting, what you've told me I've had, what you have concluded that my diagnosis is versus the lifestyle changes that I'm going to take. But this was key because there are a lot of people walking around that may not have needed to be diagnosed or given medication for their blood pressure. Because one thing about blood pressure, if you aren't active in going in there and talking to your doctor about, hey, you know, I really don't want to take this. What can I do to come off of it? What can I do to wean off of this? If you are not the advocate for that, you are on that blood pressure medication for life. It does not have an expiration date. They're just going to keep letting you come in. And if that one's not working, they might not even take that one away. They're going to pile another one on top of that. Okay, so high blood pressure, it is one of those things that lifestyle changes can impact greatly. It's one of those things that definitely can be improved or reversed, okay? And that's just one of them. Now let's talk about barriers to care. We're looking at stigma and masculinity norms. We heard that earlier too. Men just don't go to the doctor. They just don't go to the doctor. And the reason why I'm highlighting the barriers is because I want you to understand that there are going to be barriers, but we've got to overcome those barriers. And you have to be the one to say, hey, okay, I'm not going to let that stop me from doing it. Yeah, the mistrust of the healthcare system is there because there's all kind of stuff going on now. And then doctors, they're just not trained to tell you some of the lifestyle things that you need to do. It's not their fault. It's not what they were trained to do. But again, we have a sick care system, and that's the reason why we have to participate and build our own healthcare team. We have to build our own healthcare team outside of conventional medicine, and then assess the barriers, and then logistical changes. So these are just barriers to care that, again, that we have to highlight and make sure we understand that they're there, but we have to be able to work through them. Okay. Now, looking at the holistic approach, this is key in taking charge of your health because you got to look at the whole person. The mind, the body, the spirit, emotional, financial, social, these are all aspects of holistic health. And if all of these aren't in harmony, if all of these aren't being addressed, you don't really have complete total health. I mean, because if you think about that person that he's fit and he has a pristine diet and that sort of thing, but he's still stressed out at work. He still lacks the sleep that is needed. And I have seen this numerous times, very fit men on high blood pressure medications. Is that healthy? He looks healthy on the outside, but when you're not looking at the whole person, when he hasn't addressed the mental health issues and he hasn't addressed some of the other things that go into it, and the spiritual side of it is a whole nother topic. When those haven't been addressed, you really don't have pure, true health. Okay. And so the benefits of the holistic approach is because it's individualized. Because now we can look at you. You don't have just this cookie cutter, regime that you're going to be given from some of the healthcare system, where it's like, okay, well, you came in with this, and then, most people would just give that. And there are certain medications that African Americans should not be taking. Namely, lisinopril is not a blood pressure medication that African Americans should be taking. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's just not for African Americans. Okay, but you will get this individualized approach if you take the holistic route. Okay, and then we'll talk about some practical steps in just a second. But the key here is it is improved overall health. You can avoid chronic illness and just an enhanced quality of life overall when all of these are working together. Okay, and just quickly, physical health, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual health. These are all key components of holistic health, and this has to be the approach. And I love where Dr. Braswell talked about the dental piece. It's huge because our dental health is tied directly to our heart health. It is also tied directly, it can affect your neurological symptoms because look at where your teeth are. It's right here. And so you have these root canals and these other dental caries that are going on that's seeping into the blood system. And then we wonder why we have brain fog and headaches and things like that. So I'm so glad that he was able to address the dental part because it is key and directly impacts heart health. Okay, effects of healthy versus unhealthy lifestyles. Again, just a quick eye shot of what that looks like. So look at the greater risk that you have of acquiring heart disease when you have an unhealthy lifestyle. And you can see with diabetes and with stroke. Look how much greater chance you have of acquiring a stroke with unhealthy. It's just unhealthy, not genetics, not anything else. It's an unhealthy lifestyle. So that is what is so key. All right. And then just some self-care stuff. You can screenshot this if you want to. I won't go through all of them. but just 15 actions to implement into self-care. I know in the men's world, self-care might not be thrown around a lot. I know with women, we all about self-care and pedicures and, massages, but I know men, you may not do that as much, but it is important and it is key. Talking to somebody, get that community, building your own healthcare team. Okay, regular exercise, practice gratitude. I talk to clients all the time. Wake up with a spirit of gratitude. It hits so much different. It brings that blood pressure down. It does a lot of different things. Okay, and then discover your why. Forgive. That's that spiritual piece. Bitterness, unforgiveness, all that kind of stuff. That tackles the stress component. Okay, that's a whole nother subject. Okay, but disconnect from social media, have sex, give, tackle what you've been putting off, set goals, have fun. All right, again, screenshot that, but take your self-care seriously. Okay, and just to conclude, taking care of your health is not just about living longer, it's about living stronger for yourself and for those who look up to you. That's that generational health right there. And if you didn't come from a healthy family, make sure a healthy family comes from you. And self-care is how you take your power back. Thank you so much.
Oh, Mrs. Shears, that was absolutely incredible. I love that if you didn't come from a healthy family, let a healthy family come from you. Thank you so much. I love that legacy impact. And so we have just a few minutes or so, and I wanted to ask you, what would you say are some practical steps men can take to jumpstart their health journey today?
Just basic things like moving your body. It's not about running out, getting a gym membership. I tell people all the time, if you just walk 30 minutes a day, that's already a jump start. Okay. So just getting into moving your body. You may move into some weight training and some other things later on, but in order to start today, I would say just walking 30 minutes a day. Okay. The next thing, eating healthier. Taking pride that nutrition has to take priority because there's so many things that we're putting in our mouths that impact inflammation, that sort of thing. So eating healthier is key. Drinking enough water, you hear about it, but you have to. If you are not filtering, helping your filters, which are like your kidney and your liver and that sort of thing, you're not going to have good health. And before you know it, that kidney stuff will creep up on you. Sleeping, de-stressing, not just taking a vacation at the end of the year, but I mean daily de-stressing, okay? And then tracking your progress. Those are some things that you can start to do today.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And when you say build your own healthcare team, who should be a part of this team?
Well, I think first of all, somebody in the functional medicine world, namely like a functional nutrition counselor, that sort of thing, because these are the ones that are going to be able to help you with those lifestyle things. As I stated before, doctors are not going to tell you to lose weight. They're not going to tell you what to eat. It's just not what they do. But you have to go with the functional side of that. So build that team member, functional nutrition counselor. You might need a spiritual counselor to address that spiritual piece, personal trainer, massage therapist, maybe even a chiropractor, because adjusting that spine and the neck, they have to be the right one though. Okay. Not just any chiropractor, a good chiropractor that believes in the holistic approach. Okay. Because adjusting that spine, we have nerves that go out and innervate every organ of our body. And if that is out of alignment, you can't, again, have true health. So people like that, and maybe even a therapist. So building your own team, don't be afraid to invest in those people to help you with your health care.
Oh, yes, I'm really big on all of those things that you discussed. And my husband is actually a chiropractor as well. So when you say find the right chiropractor, it definitely makes a difference.
Mhm.
Someone who is, specific and scientific in their approach, who does,
Mhm.
x-rays and screenings to make sure that they're not guessing. He always says to see is to know and to not see is to guess. And we will never guess with your health. So that's why they always do x-rays and scans prior to that. that. I always say, whenever I talk about him, I say, you got to pay me. I'm out here marketing for you. Um, but yeah, so thank you so much for everything that you shared. I love this holistic approach because everything is interconnected.
Absolutely.
And yes, so thank you so much for sharing. It was just so phenomenal, and even giving us specific, prescriptions that African Americans shouldn't take. We're not privy to this. When a doctor comes in and tells you, "Oh, this is your prescription," you just think it's going to work for you, and you may not know that. Oh, maybe African Americans shouldn't be, taking this prescription for high blood pressure. So I thank you for giving us the inside information on so many things that are affecting African American men's health, and we truly appreciate you. All righty.
Dr. Bolar, I have a couple
Yes.
questions that online. We have one of the attendees with their hand raised. One of the
Awesome.
questions
Okay.
online for Danielle was, what is the one? I think herbal practices make a difference. What do you think about herbal practices? One of the attendees asked.
And definitely something to explore, because if some of the herbal things, that herbal teas and some of that stuff, that is a part of kind of the holistic approach. The thing I suggest, though, again, in building that team, is have a professional nutrition, a functional nutrition or functional medicine coach that can help guide you in that way. And again, for everybody, it's not okay, let me just dump everything that I'm doing and just switch over. You have to kind of slowly work your way into it, okay? Because your body needs to be able to respond to it first, and then your doctor can say, okay, wean off of that, and then you can show them that your body is in the best state of health. So just jumping in and say, oh, let me go do this, because you can hurt yourself too doing some of that herbal stuff. So you want to make sure you have the right guidance.
Another one of the attendees asked, when you were showing the slide about the numbers and whatnot, the question was, is it possible that these numbers could be different for people of African descent? So I think he was showing cholesterol, glucose, those numbers. Is there things I guess we need to know, being of African descent, about those numbers?
Yes, and so when they're looking at, even with the blood pressure, um, there's a whole nother scale, that not a whole nother scale, but what they've done is give some more wiggle room. So if you see a higher number in terms of African American as it pertains to African Americans, I still wouldn't want to teeter on that. It's just that they're saying that, oh, African Americans, they're not depending on us to have the lifestyle that can, combat these certain diseases. And so there was a whole nother study that was out about this, concerning how they move the scale. So say, for instance, between 70 and 100. Well, then for African Americans, it's 105, then they're telling you, okay, you're within normal range. It's okay. They're still not that concerned about it. The doctor said, but I'm not concerned about it. It's 105, but I'm not concerned about it. Okay. There is a different scale, but I still would remain in that functional range, because they're just kind of looking at this overall general population and not necessarily honing in on you as an individual. And there are other factors that contribute to what you have going on as well. So we still can't just look at this scale and think, oh, this is normal and I'm good. Okay. So again, staying in that functional range is going to be key.
Okay. How do people get in contact with you? You have any social media anyway? If you get in contact, we have another person, Barbara Courtney, who also wants to ask the question.
Yes, so you can go to my website. You can visit my website at thebetterchoicehealth.com. You'll see as you scroll down, there's an opportunity to have a free strategy session with me, where we can just talk about what you might have going on. If you already know you have something going on right now and you say, you know what, I just need you to look at my overall health, we offer a full comprehensive health audit, and you can also click on that and purchase that audit as well. But you can come to my website at thebetterchoicehealth.com. And then I'm also on Instagram. I'm trying to get with all these young people. Instagram and TikTok, and it's just The Better Choice Health on Instagram.
Thank you. Barbara, you have the floor.
No, I did not have any questions. I think that was by accident.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Danielle. We're going to transition. Dr. Miller, Dr. Miller had a fatherhood engagement that he had to transition to, so we're going to give him a pass. Great things and work in this fatherhood research area. We always make way, and when we have to serve in our role as fathers. So his daughter's winning an award, so he's attending her award ceremony. So. Next up, we have one of our own Moynihan Institute fellows, Dr. Bolar, that's going to talk about the impact of relationships on Black men's health. Dr. Bolar researches, she uses an ecological approach, to understand how contextual factors impact father involvement, intimate relationships, and familiar function in the African American community. As I said before, she is a Moynihan Institute fellow as well as a professor at the University of West Georgia. Dr. Bolar, you have the floor.
Wonderful. Well, this is such a critical conversation, and I'm so grateful for Ms. Shears because she really laid the groundwork for just the landscape of how African American men are functioning when it comes to their overall health. And also, too, so grateful for Mr. Braswell discussing dental health. I think that, as we said before, is something that we don't necessarily think about, but understanding that connection with our cardiovascular health is also very important. So I just feel like, you guys had your main course, and hopefully I'll give you a little bit of dessert. And, hopefully you'll also be leaving with some things that will be very impactful for you. But one thing that I want to, really emphasize is that, I think that one of the most pressing public health issues of our day is the inability to relate well. And we're seeing this. I always say that the ability to have healthy relationships is a matter of life and death. And on the extreme end, we just saw just a couple of days ago, right here in Georgia, that couple who was fighting publicly, and we had a murder, death, suicide. So that is on the far extreme end. But the reality is that we were created to be in relationship. We are relational beings. And when we do not have healthy relationships, that a part of us suffers, and it impacts our physical health. And so the gravity of this conversation, you may say, well, what is this coming in here? I hope that gives you a picture, and unfortunately, I feel like we are seeing it more and more. Honestly, one of the most dangerous places people can be is actually within the confines of their home. And it's also probably one of the safest places that people can be. But it takes a relationship skill set to create these healthy relationships. And one of the things that I think is very beautiful about understanding relationships and building relationship skills is that it isn't rocket science. If we follow, honestly, some of the lessons that we learned in kindergarten, in adulthood, we will be doing very well with our relationships. All right. So just as an overview of our conversation today, we're going to talk about what is the greatest predictor of overall happiness. And even when we're thinking about the health implications, like not just the mental health implications of how well our relationships are doing, but even the physical health implications. When we think about the impact of stress on our physical health, a lot of what we are going to the doctor. Dr. Caroline Leaf, she talks a lot about this. She's a neuroscientist, is that it actually stemmed from, maybe a stressor. All righty. So I'm going to give you the answer to this question. What is the greatest predictor of overall happiness for human beings? I want you to be thinking about that now. And then we're going to talk about, here's the unique thing in a culture that is really all about, self-gratification. If we're in a westernized culture, a lot of times it is very much so focused on, you only live once, make sure you're happy, and that's how we are kind of, situating ourselves. But the thing about happiness, Dr. Arthur Brooks, who is a researcher at Harvard, happiness is very elusive. Okay. Like if you're like, I just want to be happy in life, and that is like your dead target, a lot of times it will fall through your fingers. But I'm going to leave you with three things based on his research that can actually help you to kind of capture it. All right. And then, when the context of relationships, we're going to talk about how it's elusive too when comparing the happiness based model of relationships versus a meaning based model for marriage or relationships. And a lot of that comes from Dr. Eli Finkel's research at Northwestern University. From his, and if you're interested, there's a book called The All or Nothing Marriage. And when we're thinking about I talked about this before, healthy relationships are a matter of life and death, and poor relationship quality, toxic relationships can literally shorten your life. Now, a lot of times people think about, the typical things when it comes to toxic relationships, arguing, physical abuse, emotional abuse, but we kind of broaden the category of what is a toxic relationship. I see a toxic relationship as anything that threatens your ability to fulfill your purpose. So that's really, really big, but I think that, I think it should go that big. And we'll talk about some heart failure research comparing couples who have higher relationship quality versus those who have lower. And then right in the middle, and as a sandwich, right in the middle of our sandwich today, we're going to be talking about the landscape. I'm not even going to go really deeply into the landscape of physical health for African American men because Mrs. Shears did such an amazing job with that. But I will talk about what we are seeing with respect to the landscape for African American men with respect to their mental health. Okay. So, but you may say, okay, the title of this talk is all about intimate relationships. What if I am not in an intimate relationship? Then just put in your most treasured relationship in that space. Which one rises to the top as this is my priority relationship? And of course, it's all about what are some practical tools that you can leave with to improve this area, because we're going to see today just how critical how you're doing in your most treasured intimate relationships and the implications that it has for your overall happiness. And then we'll leave you with, especially for our men, how can you find a good therapist? All righty. Because that's key. I always say that I'm a therapist myself, but I always say you want to make sure that you find a good fit. And we'll talk about just a few keys to help you with finding that. So I don't know, put it in the chat. I want this to be a conversation, family. So what do you think and I don't know, I'm probably giving it all away with the title of my presentation today. But what do you think is the greatest predictor of overall happiness? Like if we measured that, that will give us a good indication of how you were doing overall. Feel free to put it in the chat. I'm probably already giving it away. But put it in the chat. Let this be conversational. What do you think is the greatest? If I looked at this area of your life, it will probably give me a good picture of how you are doing in your overall happiness. Okay. Feel free to put it in the chat as we go along. But I'm already going to give you the answer on the next slide, which is, so this is looking at overall happiness. This is research from Dr. Bradbury and Carney. They are just really well-renowned researchers in the healthy relationship space. This is in their most recent book, Intimate Relationships. It is actually an academic book, and they are referencing numerous studies that look at overall happiness. And these areas around this larger circle, those are areas of how is your marriage happiness? What is your happiness with your health? What is your happiness with your family? Your happiness with your friendships? So looking at happiness in all of these other areas and how much are they related to your overall happiness in life? And we see, interestingly so, is that it's only 0.14 with respect to work. But how much of us, especially thinking about, and I value I value the way that men value work, right? Because I feel like a part of that is it's a part of like your DNA and identity in a way. But when it comes to overall happiness, its relationship to your overall happiness, your happiness with work, that relationship is at 0.14. Okay. Finances, 0.16. Okay. Hobbies, 0.21. And how you're doing in your health, 0.25. How well connected and happy you feel with your community, 0.19. Your friendships, 0.20. Family, 0.29. But your intimate relationships and marriage, a whopping 0.41. And some research that Dr. Eli Finkel, references says it's like even more than that. And so I just wanted to lay the stage for just emphasizing that, we are in a culture that's really quick to say, bye, Felicia, right? And so, but I just really want to emphasize that if there's no other domain in our life that's going to tell us how well we are doing than how we are doing in our most treasured relationship. Okay. And in this case, it was looking at marriage. All righty. So, but here is the thing when it comes to intimate relationships, the landscape has changed. It is no longer what it was 50 years ago. It's no longer even what it was 20 years ago. Okay. They seem like we're coming up on that rocky side of the mountain, but if you all are probably all aware of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And historically, people wanted, a lot of times we talk about, well, this is not my grandparents' marriage, or this is not our grandparents' intimate relationships. Because back in the day, people got married for pragmatic reasons. It wasn't even necessarily for love. Okay. Sometimes people needed shelter. They needed to, you know, it was called a pragmatic marriage. People wanted to get their basic needs met right here at the bottom of that mountain when we're thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But today we are in the era of the self-expressive marriage or relationship. And it's interesting because it's almost like culture has a love-hate relationship with intimate relationships and marriage, such that we have the highest expectations that we have ever had historically for relationships. Now we're at the top of the mountain where we want our partners to help us with our personal growth. We want them to be our best friend. We want them to be our romantic partner, our partner in crime when it comes to kiddos. Like we're asking for a lot more from our intimate relationships, okay? And so with that, we're seeing that the weight of that has more of a bearing on our lives. How well we're doing there has more of a bearing on our lives today than it did 50 or 60 years ago because we weren't asking for as much. Now, for a lot of people, it's an expression of their identity. Okay, so now we are in the era of the self-expressive marriage, alrighty, or intimate relationship. And here is the thing about that is that it takes a relationship skill set to get to the top of the mountain. And you may say, well, why is this important? Because if we're thinking about mental health, if we're thinking about happiness, our ability to relate well, whether you're as individuals in general, but especially as men in particular, there is, oh my goodness, when it comes to health and being in a relationship, we see, of course, that men fare better in their physical health because there's this level of accountability that's there. We even see that risk-taking behaviors go down when men get married. Okay? It's very much so a protective factor. But as I was saying before, the landscape has changed. We're no longer in the pragmatic marriage of the 1800s. People are not even just wanting to get in an intimate relationship just for love. They want self-expression. That's where we are today. But to get to that point to where you can meet those high expectations, it's like climbing a mountain. And there the air is thinner. So it takes a relationship skill set as well as knowledge, as well as time to reach those higher levels. And the reason why I'm emphasizing why it is so important to reach those higher levels is because of the implications that it has for our happiness as well as our mental and physical health is impacting us in ways that it never has historically. Okay, so that's why I'm kind of emphasizing that. Now, this is also based on Dr. Eli Fink, and he even calls it the suffocation model on marriage because people have these high expectations, but oftentimes they don't have the oxygen to get to those higher levels. They don't have the time, they don't have the relationship skills nor knowledge to get to that high level. But we're going to talk about the happiness space versus meaning space. And one reason why I want to bring this up is because I said before that happiness is elusive, right? Sometimes if you're just trying to make a beeline for it, it can fall through. It's hard to kind of to catch. And so there are two different philosophies on intimate relationships. One is a happiness-based versus a meanings-based model. The happiness-based model is focused on pleasure, self-esteem, also too, there's kind of almost like a soulmate idea that, if it's a healthy relationship, it shouldn't you shouldn't require a lot of effort, and it shouldn't require extensive endurance or forbearance. And at the root of this model is the idea that marital and personal fulfillment are actually incompatible. We see that, you can see that all on your TikTok timeline, okay? But on a meanings-based perspective, and the reason why I'm glad that he used this language, because Dr. Arthur Brooks' research talks about how actually meaning is very instrumental in promoting our happiness as humans, right? So this one is focused on, I'm not just doing this because I'm trying to be happy. I am serving in this relationship. What is the meaning of what I'm doing? It pursues self-expression. It believes that, hey, it may take a little bit of work and even endurance to make this thing happen. And at the heart of this philosophy is the idea that relationship or marital happiness and personal fulfillment are actually compatible, not at odds with one another. Why is this important for this conversation? Because based on Dr. Arthur Brooks' research, he finds that there are three pillars to happiness. And he's written a book on this. He wrote it. He actually co-authored this book with Oprah. But these three areas are enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. And what he is finding is that for a lot of people, they are losing meaning and they are losing purpose. And this is where our intimate relationships come into play. Relationships bring meaning to our lives. They give us value and they give us purpose and meaning. And so I always say that it takes a knowledge and a skill set to climb that mountain of relationship or marital success. And so, as I said before, now shifting gears back to how healthy relationships are a matter of life and death. And this comes from the Journal of Cardiology, actually. They were looking at, these were people who all had the diagnosis of congestive heart failure. And they compared the individuals who had better relationship or marital quality versus those who had poor quality. And what they found, they had the same diagnosis. They started at the same starting point, was that those individuals with poor marital quality were more likely to die than those who had better marital quality. So when I say healthy relationships are a matter of life and death, that's exactly what it is. And so these are just, being alone, feeling lonely is just like, smoking a pack of cigarettes. 15 cigarettes a day. A lot of seniors are feeling lonely. So I'm just going to kind of move beyond that. But this is kind of the connection between why relationships are important. The National Institute on Aging shows that loneliness is becoming an epidemic in the United States. Despite all of the digital technology, it's becoming an epidemic. And guess who is most susceptible to loneliness? It's men. And one thing that we're finding is that it can accelerate the buildup of plaque in our arteries. It can actually cause or it can promote inflammation in the brain. Some research is showing that it may contribute to Alzheimer's disease. It can potentially accelerate cancer growth. So it can definitely negatively impact your health. So, with the physical health of Black men, this is from the RISE research. I'm not going to really go into that. Mrs. Shears gave a wonderful background. We know that Black men are disproportionately, suffer premature death and significant incidence of common diseases. So, if you want to go into that just for the purposes of time, because we have like just a few minutes, you can feel free to make sure that you watch her portion. But I want to put this into context. One of the reasons why we're seeing some of the health implications or some of the health outcomes that we see for African American men is really, of course, those social determinants of health, and then as well as different cultural and gendered norms, also different experiences in the healthcare system, as well as sometimes limited access, as well as lifestyle choices. But I want to shift gears to the mental health, okay? So according to Healthy People 2020, we see that mental disorders are the leading cause of disability in the US, and it accounts for about 20% of years of a life lost to disability and premature mortality. But as we can see yet again, African Americans are disproportionately more likely than whites to experience severe symptoms and long-term disorder trajectories, okay? And 7% of Black men meet clinical criteria for major depression within 1 year. However, mental health is still highly stigmatized, especially even within the Black community. I do believe that COVID-19 has impacted that some. It's not as much so. I think that, but it is still there. And so these rates probably are not quite accurate. And we see that in general, African American men have more adverse life experiences than men of other racial groups, and consequently typically experience poorer mental health. All righty. So you may say, okay, this is good. This is interesting with the intimate relationships in marriage. But what if I'm not in an intimate relationship? My encouragement to you would be to nurture your most treasured relationships. So Harvard, they are doing a longitudinal study. It's over 80 years. They were first looking at what predicts health and happiness across the lifespan. Actually, John F. Kennedy was one of his first early participants. They were looking at young men who were students at Harvard and comparing them to young men in the inner city Boston. And they were trying to figure out what predicts health and happiness across the lifespan. And what they found was that it was close, loving relationships that predicted health and happiness across the lifespan. And they even found that even with a sibling, having a close relationship with your sibling can actually also prolong your life and health as well. So my encouragement to you would be to nurture your most treasured relationships with your kids, with your siblings, with your friends, as well as with your family. So what can Black men do to improve their relationships? Because I always say relationships, the ability to relate well is literally a matter of life and death. I would say build your relationship skills as well as literacy. Just like how we promote literacy in school for children, we know the value of reading. We know the opportunities that people could miss out on if they don't have the ability to read. We have to emphasize the same level of value and importance when it comes to relational literacy. And these are just a few. I always say, I always want to give you the answer key to the test. These are a few of those like little answer keys to the test, right? One is when it comes to conflict management. I always say that conflict is inevitable in relationships. A lot of times people think that conflict in and of itself is an indication that there is something inherently wrong with the relationship. But the reality is that no one is perfect. You're not perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect, like person, right? And so, how do we manage conflict when it comes up? If we manage it well, we can leave on the other side actually more deeply connected because I've gotten in tune with my vulnerable emotion and I was able to communicate with that with you, and you've expressed empathy, and that is the secret sauce, that empathy piece there. So my encouragement would be, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with your wife, whether it's with a girlfriend, attack the issue and not the person. How can you separate that person's personhood from what they did? And how can you explain objectively what they did and how it impacted you, and how did it make you feel? What was the vulnerable emotion, right? Not the anger, not the frustration, because at the level of anger and frustration, we are not going to see connection. That is where the walls are going to go up, all right? So how can we attack the issue without attacking one another? And so I always say, when you attack conflict, you want to be able to manage it in a way that doesn't undermine your own personal integrity nor the integrity of your relationship. These are 4 things that you want to avoid in your relationship. So this is an accountability check for not just the men, but everybody. All right. How do you avoid the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse? Okay. This is based on Dr. John Gottman's research, who is probably one of the most premier researchers in the field of healthy relationships and marriage. He calls these things the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse because they are so predictive of divorce and the separation in the relationship. He can watch and observe a newly wed couple in his research lab, right? And based on his research protocol, and he can determine up to 94% accuracy whether these couples will get divorced within 7 years because he follows them longitudinally. These 4 horsemen that he has found, he calls them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: criticism. Avoid that. Contempt. This works for whether it's with a child or what. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling, complete shutdown. Try to avoid all of those. And then also, too, we want to practice gratitude and appreciation. When you see your partner, your child, your best friend, your friend doing something that you like to see them doing, actually acknowledge it openly. Express your gratitude, express your appreciation. That does something for you, makes you feel better about the relationship, and it actually it encourages and reinforces that positive behavior. The thing about it is, a better relationship, you're not going to be able to criticize your way to a better relationship. What you appreciate appreciates in value. Okay. Try to adopt a meaning-based perspective on relationships that I talked about earlier. And this goes back to what Mrs. Shears talked about with the forgiveness piece. We're talking about physical health. When we do not forgive and we harbor that bitterness and that resentment, it turns into corrosive anger. And that corrosive anger is what turns on us in our health. The University of Tennessee is doing amazing research. They have a forgiveness lab. We see that when we do not forgive, forgiveness does not mean that I'm saying what you did was okay. It's acknowledging the pain that happened, but it is you releasing the corrosive anger that's trying to hook onto you, that's actually negatively impacting your health, potentially causing pain in your body, making you more susceptible to colds, and messing up your sleep schedule, the whole nine. And we want to apologize well, a way that resonates with your partner. So I say this is just as important. I know I have like a minute. This is just as important as knowing your partner's love language is your partner's apology language. Okay, so knowing your partner's apology language, so in a way that it's going to stick. 5 apology languages are accepting responsibility, expressing regret, they are making restitution, asking for forgiveness, and genuinely repenting. You have to figure out what really resonates with whether it be your child, whether it be your wife, whether it be whomever. Okay. And this is just a little model. I always say that relationships are a character issue. Okay, how can I show up as the strongest, best integral man in my relationships? Not even just who I am right now, but who do I aspire to be? How can I build my relationship skills, communication, conflict management, relationship skills? And how can I build my own emotional intelligence? All righty. And so, for lifelong love, you remember I was talking about that research, build friendship. If it's in your intimate relationships, build fondness. Here's the thing, we mess up in relationships. But what we see is that the negative experiences are weightier. So you want to have, and so if you had a negative interaction with your spouse, your child, or whomever, then what we see is that that's weightier. So you can't just have one for one. One positive experience for one negative experience is not going to absolve that negativity. We need to have 5 positive experience for every negative experience. Express your feelings of appreciation as well. And lastly, how to find a therapist. Just think about, who would you want to, who would you just like to feel comfortable talking to? Like, what type of person is that? You want them to be culturally competent. You want them to understand your experiences and your journey. And here's the thing about finding a therapist is that your first shot might not be on the bullseye. So you may have to try multiple people until you find the right fit. Don't give up on therapy if the first person you work with, you're like, oh, what was that? So there's also a resource out there specifically for Black men, and it's called Therapy for Black Men. It is online. They will help to connect you with a therapist who understands and values your journey. And you can go to therapyforblackmen.org. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Bolar. So as we finishing up, I am going to uh, ask Dr. Bolar a couple questions. You all have questions. We're going to raise your hand. We're going to allow you to come on and ask questions of the panelists. And then I'll give the kind of call to action. So, Dr. Bolar, as people kind of thinking about questions, what is one thing that Black men could do to improve their intimate relationships? And as you answer that question, somebody did say on the chat, do folks even understand what an intimate relationship is? So kind of a compounded question. What is one thing that Black men could do to improve their intimate relationships? And kind of explain to us what do you mean when you say the term intimate relationship?
Yeah, so intimate, no. So typically, Dr. Sternberg has a triangular theory on love, right? And he used to be the previous uh, director of the American Psychological Association, really big in psychology. One side of that triangle is passion. I would say an intimate relationship is something that is romantic in nature, is close. And so I would say of his triangle, it probably has all 3 parts where you're in a committed relationship, and it's romantic in nature, and there's a level of intimacy. And so intimacy is the gateway. You can have intimacy with a friend, but intimacy is a gate. The way to open that up is through intimate sharing, emotionally, physically, what have you. So that's kind of an intimate relationship. Okay. There's varying degrees of commitment, right? Marriage being probably the highest degree of commitment, a situationship being the lowest degree, or what have you. And so that would be kind of my definition. And then the other part of your question, Dr. Shears.
Yeah, so the other part of the question was, what is the one thing that Black men could do to improve their intimate relationships?
Ooh. This is based on Dr. John Gottman's research. And he said one of the most powerful things that men can do in relationships, and I think this is true for Black men too. I'll probably give you two, but this one's based on his research, and the other one is based on kind of my work, is accept influence.
Mm.
We are seeing that, and one reason why that is important is because it's so important. If they're in a heterosexual relationship, it is so important for the woman that they are with.
Okay.
And so it shows that you value her opinion. It shows that and it is very powerful way to say that, hey, you do have influence in my life. And I value what you have to say. I value what you have to share. And on the other side of that, I would say empathy. Like a lot of times it's easy for how men are oriented to want to fix things. But I would say empathize with the feelings of your partner. That's going to make them feel connected to you. That's going to make them feel seen. That's going to make them feel heard. That's going to make them feel understood. And that's intimacy. So as they're sharing, they're like, look at me. This is what I'm going through. And you show empathy and you validate that even if you feel differently from what is being expressed, even if you feel differently, you can validate someone's emotions and see the situation differently. But when you show empathy and you validate that person's emotions, you show value. You make them feel secure. And that's what we're looking for in relationships. If we're thinking about it from an attachment perspective, we are looking for security in our relationships as well as safety. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Um, any questions from the floor as we begin to wrap up? Dr. Bolar, I have one other question. What is the hardest issue Black men face in relationships, and how can they overcome it?
I would say one of the hardest things that Black men face, I think, is feeling safe enough to share their deep emotional experiences without feeling like they'll be attacked or that it will be used against them. But that is so key that they can do that, because when you can, then it creates an opportunity for a deep emotional bond and intimacy, like letting themselves be seen, the vulnerable sides as well. It's hard to do because it's not oftentimes how we socialize men, or boys. So, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. As I wrap up, just want to talk a little bit about, again, we are Moynihan Institute for Fatherhood Research and Policy, and just been trying to discuss some issues that are important to men. Our focus has been on how do we increase and study fathers' impact on children, families, and communities. And so this is the fourth or fifth webinar that we've had, so keep in touch with us. Stay on our mailing list. We've talked about Can Black Men Heal America? We've talked about men's grief. We've had a one before this, talked about the contemporary examination of Black fathers in TV commercials. And so if you have topics that you want us to discuss and bring presenters and scholars on to talk about, please reach out to us. We're just trying to not only study father from an academic standpoint, but also bring this information to the masses to have discussions and conversations about. Let's see. So just kind of our charge for the presentation today. We've talked about that Black men's health has been an uphill battle, but we are seeing change. There are programs out there, for example, like the African American Male Wellness Agency out of Chicago that has screened over 5,000 Black men in 2024 alone, and revealed that 85% had high blood pressure, kind of talking about some of the things that Danielle talked about, and connecting them to vital resources. And even Dr. Bolar talked about how important it is for therapists and how to get connected to the healthcare field. And so just a couple of points that, as we maybe have discussions among our sphere of influence and things of that nature. How can we take action today? It's time to put your health first. It's not alone. You're not alone in this journey. So know and understand your numbers. So that's kind of one of the takeaways. So as Danielle kind of said before, we often get the call like everything is fine. But go and look at your chart and see what your actual numbers are. And, until you go past that certain level, they'll always be like, okay, everything is fine. So that's your first step to a healthier you. Find a health screening, seek functional medical professional, and add to your healthcare team that you're essentially responsible for your own health. Move your body, participate in wellness walk, community fitness initiatives. Regular activity is key. And speaking of relationships, won't you grab your wife or your intimate partner and go for a walk and do some moving together. Seek knowledge, build brotherhood. We have to talk about these things. We got to break the silence regarding mental and physical health. So explore opportunities in your community, talk with your boys, talk with your family members, begin to have this conversation and begin to be an influencer in regards to your sphere of influence about how important this is. Someone said earlier, I can't remember who, but I think it might have been Kenneth Braswell that really said, not taking care of yourself, not taking care of your health is selfish. I've never thought about that. So never thought about it that way. So it really resonates with me. Connect with a doctor. If you haven't seen one recently, make an appointment. Someone said earlier, preventive care is powerful. Is where we got to start. Prevent some of these chronic diseases. And then ask about culturally competent providers. Do your research within your community. Your health is your wealth. Join the countless Black men who've already taken charge of their well-being. Let's continue building a legacy of strength, vitality, and longevity together. Thanks for everybody who joined. This recording will be available. Share this information with your friends and colleagues. Kenny Braswell, any parting comments? I know you had a video of some things. Any parting comments before we end the webinar?
This was incredible. Thank you for your commitment to this work and to this conversation. Dr. Shears and Dr. Bolar, you know how much I appreciate you. I love your energy. I love this conversation, the whole relationship side of this conversation. And you and I have kind of talked about, even in the work of Fathers Incorporated and working with fathers, this whole notion of expanding conceptually what we're talking about when we say relationships, because sometimes we can be locked into thinking only romantic relationships. And in our space, we have to begin to start talking about the nature of co-parenting relationships, being in relationship with someone without having a relationship with someone without having to be in relationship with someone. Relation is still there. And then to Mrs. Shears, you have shown us your brilliance. There's no way you're going to be able to hide from us anymore. So be ready to be called on. I need you on my podcast soon so that we could talk about this conversation with that particular audience. And so thank you so much. And I want to just remind you all that Thursday is World Sickle Cell Awareness Day. It is a chronic disease that impacts mostly African Americans and has never gotten its just due in the spaces of chronic diseases. And we have to do more about that. I wanted to show you a video about that, but I would just point you to the website, which is sickledocuseries.com, sickledocuseries.com. I am working with a colleague of mine, Jenks Morton, now to create a docuseries on sickle cell called Sickle. It will be out probably in another year or so. But I'm very excited about it because of its connection not only to African Americans, but more specifically to African American men, because African American men are the transmitters of the sickle cell trait and disease. And the campaign that we are launching now is called Know Your Sickle Cell Status. It is important that we all understand and know our status so that we can eliminate and eradicate the transmission of sickle cell to our children.
Again, thank you all. Thank the panelists. Thank you all for attending. Again, please share this information. Look for upcoming webinars for the remainder of the year. And again, let us know there's certain topics you want us to bring panelists on and things that affect our community. Everybody have a safe day. Again, thank you for your participation. Thank you again, panelists.